How's it going, my rye bread bakers? Welcome to episode number 3 of the rye bread series. Today we're making caraway-honey rice squares, so let's go to the kitchen and get started. This must be the most unique rye bread I've made so far. It's a yeast leavened dough made using techniques which I would normally use for making crackers, but unlike a cracker, it is soft and flexible. I guess what we're going to make here is baked pre-sliced bread, which is awesome because you don't have to slice it. It comes pre-portioned straight from the oven. It has a nice rustic whole grain flavor from the dark rye flour, further enhanced by the addition of toasted caraway seeds, and it is sweetened with dark honey. You can of course adjust the recipe, use different seeds, use different syrup. You can even play around with the flour. If you want the slice to be lighter, you could swap some of the whole grain rye flour for wheat flour. Here's a little bonus, this bread's party trick. If you trim the edges, you can tear it open like this. Perfect for those closed-faced sandwiches. And you already know what I'm going to say next. This bread is super easy to make. So let me show you how it's done, starting with the ingredients. And there are not many ingredients in this dough. Some whole grain or dark rye flour, yeast, salt, caraway seeds, honey, and some water. When it comes to the equipment, we'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a pan for toasting the seeds, if you do decide to toast your seeds, a bowl for mixing the dough in, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a fork, and a rolling pin. So with all that out of the way, let's begin the process. First things first, let's toast the seeds. Toasting the caraway seeds will bring out more flavor. It'll take around 2 minutes on high heat. Whilst the seeds are toasting, let's start making the dough. This is a quick bread, so use warm water. In a large bowl, combine the water, the yeast, the salt, the honey, and as soon as the seeds are toasted, add them to the liquid as well. Then give it all a good mix. Make sure you dissolve the salt completely. And then, finally, add the flour and mix it to a dough. That's all there is to it. You can fully mix this dough in less than 5 minutes. And that is counting the time it will take you to weigh all the ingredients. Rye bread can really be that simple. And if you haven't already, I'll highly suggest you check out my previous 2 rye bread videos. You'll find them in the rye bread playlist on the channel. And there'll be quite a few more coming in the near future. Okay, once your dough is fully mixed, check the temperature. My dough was 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. My kitchen is around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, bulk fermentation will take around 60 to 75 minutes. Once your dough has doubled in size, it's ready for the next step. If it's not there yet, simply wait for longer. I'm moving on, dust your dough with flour, generously. Release it from the bowl using the dough scraper and tip it out on the table. And then dust it with even more flour. Do not underestimate the stickiness of this dough. If there isn't enough flour, it will stick to the table. Start by working it into a rough rectangle shape using your hands. We're going to trim the edges of this dough later, so you want to avoid having rounded corners on it, in order to not have to trim it too much. Using a rolling pin, roll it out to a larger rectangle. Try to make the thickness as even as you can. I rolled it to a size of about 30 by 20 centimeters, which is 12 by 8 inches. If you feel that the dough might start sticking to the table, lift it up and chuck some flour underneath it. Better to be safe than sorry. And make sure you roll it gently, do not press the rolling pin down too much. And this is about what it should look like once you're done. Now we can trim the edges and then divide it into 6 equal pieces. Or if you want them to be larger, then divide the dough into 4. If you want to make more squares, simply double the recipe. I would suggest dividing the dough into half after the first mix. It'll be much easier to work with 2 smaller pieces than 1 large one. Place the squares on a baking tray lined with non-stick paper. You can collect all the trimmings, press them together, then flatten the piece of dough and then trim it up to make 1 more square. And that is it when it comes to shaping. It's very simple, you just have to make sure there's enough flour so the dough doesn't stick. You can always shake it off once you're done. There's one more thing we need to do before final proofing, and that is docking the surface, also known as poking a bunch of holes in it. You could probably skip this step, but they do look pretty good like this. A docking wheel can also be used, that is if you own one. The final proof should take around the same amount of time as bulk fermentation. During this time, preheat the oven, 220 degrees Celsius, fan off, and that is 430 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not easy to tell if they're risen or not, but as you can see, they do start looking a little bit puffy. They look like they're ready for the oven. Let's get these bad boys in there. They will take around 12 minutes fully bake. Because this bread is so flat, I've set the tray higher. It's in the middle of the oven, closer to the top heating element, which funny enough is the only heating element my oven has, but it does the job. Anyway, once your squares are ready, take them out of the oven, leave them on a rack to cool down. After they have cooled down, you can stack them on top of each other and wrap them up in plastic wrap to keep them fresh and soft for longer. And there you go, that's how you make caraway and honey flavored rice squares. Like I said, you can use different seeds or different syrups. Anise seed, fennel seed, coriander seed. You could even toast them and grind them into a powder, just like I did for the first recipe in the rye bread series. Swap the honey for molasses, black treacle or maple syrup. Use some buttermilk instead of water. Experimenting and adjusting recipes is what baking is all about. And if you fail along the way, the worst that can happen is that you learn something. And by the way, here's another trick you can do with this bread. If you trim off only one edge and carefully separate the two sides, you'll end up with a little rye bread pocket. I found that quite nifty. So what do you think of this recipe? Have you ever seen something like this before? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.